Thank everybody for coming and welcome you to our remote bidding best practices peer exchange. We're here today to talk about the current state of infrastructure construction and really discuss best practices around online bidding and the way sort of bid openings are changing and how agencies are sharing results and just some of the other timely issues about working remotely and other things that have come up around these areas. We're very honored to have some guests today from transportation agencies around the country, particularly from FHWA and a couple of our DOT partners. They'll be able to speak on these issues and really how they've led through and gotten resolution on some of these things and move forward with a lot of different things. We will have a Q&A session and we'll try and answer any questions that our attendees may have regarding these best practices. Just for a little housekeeping before we get started, throughout today's webinar, if you're an attendee, you'll be muted. We do have a Q&A feature. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, if you scroll your mouse down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see Q&A. You can enter your question there. We'll monitor those questions and we'll try and get those questions to our panelists here. We'll address as many questions as you can, but if we don't get to those questions, we'll try and compile all of them and send out an email to all the registered participants with a link to this recording and with the answer to those questions. Speaking of recording, we are recording this and we understand, we're using Zoom here and we all have different internet connections and those may bring some challenges. If you experience connection issues, just try and hop back on. The same thing goes with our panelists. They might be getting knocked off. My cat keeps knocking my modem out of the wall. So we're just going to kind of deal with those as they come, but hopefully we can keep this moving through. As I mentioned to the panelists beforehand, our goal here at Infotech is really to get them as experts to share their experience and to share, how their agencies are dealing with some of the issues moving forward, not for Infotech to speak or really discuss our products. So with that said, we'll go ahead and make some introductions real quick. As I might or might not have said before, my name is Joe Rowland. I'm Director of Business Development for Infotech. My experience with Infotech has really revolved around the bidding products, both with DOTs and with some of our local agencies and some different state infrastructure agencies. I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing Catherine Weisner, and I'm just going to ask her to say hello and a couple things about herself and who she works for. She's with FHWA, and she'll give you her title and everything.
I am. So I'm with Federal Highway Administration. Again, my name is Catherine Weisner. I am the Construction and Contract Administration Engineer, specifically working with Everyday Counts e-construction deployment.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Next, we have John Taylor from West Virginia DOT.
Yes, this is John Taylor. I'm the Assistant Director of Contract Administration for Logistics and Technologies for West Virginia DOT.
Okay, thank you, John. We have Devin Townsend from Nebraska DOT.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. My name's Devin Townsend. I'm the Director of IT for the Nebraska DOT.
Okay. Also, some from Nebraska. We have Kendall Steege. Kendall, did I say your last name right?
Steggy.
Steggy. I'm sorry.
No problem. This is Kendall Steggy. I'm the Contract Lettings Manager for the Nebraska DOT.
Okay. Also on the line, we have Blake Fulton from Tennessee DOT.
I'm Blake Fulton. I'm a transportation project specialist. I work here at TDOT in the headquarters construction office.
Okay, and also from Tennessee, we have Grant Heinzman.
Hey, Grant Heinzman with Tennessee. I'm a transportation specialist senior. We oversee all of the, Blake and I oversee all the electronic bidding as well as pretty much all the e-construction initiatives for TDOT.
Okay, great. Thank you, Grant. We did have Brian Dilley from Delaware County, Ohio as a guest slated. I think Brian has about 19 different jobs with the county and he was not able to make today. He had to cancel on us at the last minute. So we will be missing him. But last but not least, I want to go ahead and introduce my colleague who a lot of you on this call probably know, He's Ozette Brown, and he's going to introduce himself and then go ahead and talk a little bit about where Infotech sees the construction industry and some bidding research that we've done in the last couple of weeks.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Ozette Brown. I'm the Director of Customer Success for Infotech, and I'll just jump right into it here. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, panelists, for joining and providing us with your insights on remote bidding best practices. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to talk a little bit, just a few minutes, about how the construction industry has recently been affected by the current pandemic with regards to bidding. Back in March of this year, we reached out to agencies, primarily DOTs, to get some insight on how they're dealing with the current pandemic. At the time, we had no idea as if you all would keep moving forward with your letting schedules, how that might impact, your business. We also didn't know, if you did move forward, how many contractors were going to be turning in bids. So we just wanted to reach out and ask some generic questions. Now, around that same time, again, mid-March timeframe, our company decided to have all of its employees work remotely, work from home. When we were speaking with the DOTs, we also found out you all were making the same types of decisions. But we also discovered that there was a mixture. So some were working from home, some were coming into the office maybe one day a week. And then that kind of led us to focus on lettings a little bit. So we noticed that, like I said earlier, you were deciding to move forward with your lettings, but what about opening those lettings? So that led to some interesting conversations. For the DOTs that said they were going to come into the office about once a week or so, that seemed to be right around the letting time. So in mid-March to now, we've noticed that either you're opening from your offices or you're opening remotely. I know Tennessee, had an opening last month where you guys opened remotely, and from what I understand, that went fairly well for the most part. All right. So we were really happy to hear that for the most part, everyone seemed to be able to, open their bids independently from the office. In addition to that, we understand that, after the openings, there's a public reading that most of your state statutes and laws require in a lot of cases. We're going to have a question around public openings and public readings in a little bit. But just to add some additional context, along with your public readings, most of those are read aloud, right? So we didn't know how were you planning to handle that? For the ones that were going to be in the office, were you just going to, is it business as usual, just reading aloud, maybe in a lot of cases to an empty room, or were you going to kind of divert to the internet and using resources on the internet to take care of that, which kind of led us to working with you all in terms of discussing opportunities of how you can maybe gear some best practices around your openings. So just a couple things here. As you continue to work in this modified business environment, there are some best practices that you might want to consider. For example, if your agency does decide to open bids remotely, obviously identify a primary person and a backup person. You never know what could happen. You might have already done that. Identify hardware, whether you have a laptop or a desktop. It's always good to have at least one reliable, if not two reliable pieces of hardware. Make sure you have your agency key. I'm sure all of our panelists know what I'm talking about. Agency key that will allow you to decrypt those bids that you're pulling down. And also, I think this is really, really important. Know the speed of your internet connection. I'd venture to say, in a lot of cases, probably the connection you have at home is a bit different from the connection that you have at work. So that's important just to realize those things. In addition, I think another very important thing to be aware of when it comes to reading the bids aloud, leverage the internet if you have the opportunity to do so. Earlier this month, we sent out basically a newsletter just highlighting the fact that there are resources on the internet that can facilitate that reading aloud. WebEx, YouTube, Zoom. There are other services. I think West Virginia, you guys use ClickMeeting, if I'm right. So there are other services out there that will allow you to facilitate that reading. However, I think really the largest best practice, in my personal opinion, is the fact that if you haven't already done so, try to encourage your contractors to turn your bids over the internet. As most of you know, I think everybody on here is doing that for the most part, but it's safe, certainly secure, and it's an awesome way to practice social distancing, quite obviously, right? You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to, be within 6 feet of anyone. Just submit it remotely and you kind of check all the boxes there. So Joe, I just, I'll turn it back over to you. Those are really just the highlights. If y'all have any questions or anything like that, we'll be providing some information at the end of our session here. All right, Joe, back to you.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Odette. Yeah, as I mentioned before, for our attendees, if you notice at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there is a Q&A feature. If you want to plug your questions into there, we'd be glad to try and get those answered live here by our attendees. While we're waiting on some of those questions, I have a few of my own that I wanted to go ahead and try and get out there. And Catherine from FHWA, if I could start with you. Odette was talking a little bit about public bid openings and the changes in those and some of the different rules around DOTs. And I remember in some of my early work with DOTs and getting internet bidding moving, they specifically mentioned approval from FHWA is really one of the reasons that they were able to move forward with just kind of the process in general. From your position with the federal government and your sort of larger position as a e-construction professional, could you just talk to us a little bit about FHWA's position on internet bidding and sort of where it fits in the larger e-construction initiatives?
Absolutely, Joe, thanks. Just so everybody knows, Federal Highway first allowed or addressed what they called computerization in 1989. So we have a long history of working with digital and electronic formats for our construction contracts for federal aid. The key point is that we allow it so long as the records are acceptable from an engineering, audit, and legal standpoint. Those are some pretty fancy words, but at the end of the day, there were 3 really important laws passed in 1998, 1999, and 2000 that essentially allowed digital commerce and digital signatures and the government itself to work in a digital environment. Currently today, there are a few commercial off-the-shelf or custom solutions on the market that our state DOTs and local agencies are using with amazing success for online bidding and online contracts and contract administration. Specifically, one of the things you guys have mentioned is 23 CFR 635-113. It's the one that's often cited. It says it shall be publicly opened and announced, either by item or by total amount. We have an information memo dated 2006, and in that are some question and answers where we discuss the intent of this regulation and that intent is to maintain transparency in the bidding environment, and that posting of the bids in a timely manner at a location accessible to the general public is okay. Essentially what this means is we have some examples of people using webcasts, audiocasts, publishing them on websites, publishing the information or the bidding on state DOT websites, and any combination thereof. One word of caution, and you did allude to it, the federal law, while we allow lots of different formats, there remain a lot of state, local, or tribal laws that regulate this process over and above what the federal government does. And those state, local, or tribal laws may require you to still do them in a public forum. But our federal regulations have moved to computerization.
Great. And Catherine, if I could just follow up there, I know your focus is e-construction. I think we have a lot of attendees on who are really looking into this as an initiative. Do you have any advice for agencies looking to start this, as a a move from paper to electronic, and not even just in bidding, but just sort of in starting e-construction initiatives in general, sort of some advice on getting moving sort of into that digital world and just from some really traditional roles and processes.
We do, Joe, thanks. For e-construction, we always advise agencies to take an honest look at their internal processes and procedures. And what are their wants, what are their needs, and what are their like to have or want to haves. That decision and that framework that they look at and how they deploy their tools and technology really makes a big difference in how successful they are. E-construction is not an overnight switch. It takes a lot of planning, outreach with your partners, contractors, vendors, subs to get it right. We've always asked states to consider online bidding first when deploying e-construction, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's a pretty easy lift. We have a lot of opportunity where a lot of different states have done online and electronic bidding. It is a mature technology. It's been well tested. It's been very successful. So where we have states that are just venturing into the computerization, digital electronic world with contracting, this is a well-established platform for them to do that. The last thing for doing the online bidding, the reason is a lot of the documents that they have to prepare and get ready, and a lot of the systems that have to be put in place to do online bidding help with the deployment of e-construction beyond bidding. So you're getting those bid packages together, you're getting those e-plans, you're getting the specs, you're getting things digitized. Often it involves digital signatures, digital routing. So those are all things that states build towards and get online. And not only are they used in e-bidding, but they're using other e-construction tools and technologies as well.
Okay, great, thank you. That was an excellent answer. If I could sort of pass the questions over to Devin now, and Devin, sort of asking you in your place as a CTO and a a technology leader, really throughout the industry, but definitely in your agency. I know at Infotech, we picked up Zoom a few months ago, but we started remote work several years ago, just trying to keep employees. It's hard to find good developers, and when they would move, we were trying to keep them on. So we moved to versions of remote work a while ago. Could you talk about some of the technologies that your agency has adopted, recently, or even in the last couple of weeks, since we've had stay-at-home orders and things like that, that have really helped y'all remain productive, and sort of talk about those specific technologies and the processes that they've improved?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. Nebraska DOT has been looking at e-construction technologies and remote work technologies for a while. So we were fortunate enough that a lot of the things that we had in place weren't new to us. We just had to scale them, obviously, because of the volume of people that were working remotely. So from a field perspective, like I mentioned, we've been looking at e-construction for a while. A lot of our field folks have laptops, smartphones, or tablets that they've been using to handle construction administration, as an example. So from a remote work standpoint, really, they're good. They were already doing it out in the field on the construction site. Where we've seen the big impact is office staff, obviously. It's hard to work remotely if you're in an office with 800 people. So those are the folks that weren't as accustomed to working remotely. Some of the things that we've been doing just in the last month to help enable those folks are very similar to what a lot of agencies and companies are dealing with. We had to make a large purchase of laptops. Not everybody that works in an office setting is portable. You obviously struggle a little bit with picking up your desktop and monitors and going from meeting to meeting. So we purchased about 125 laptops for the people that were identified to work remotely by the administration. In addition to that, we've seen some huge flexibility from our staff and just the willingness to use their own personal equipment, which is great. So that limits the amount of expenditures that we need, that we have to buy laptops, as an example. So we've seen a lot of personal use to remote desktop back into their computers from the office, a lot of cell phone use and home internet use. Obviously, a struggle with that is that you still have to be able to get on all of the systems that you need to do your job. So we've seen a huge increase in number of VPN connections that we had to establish. along with multi-factor VPN connections to make sure that those connections are secure now that so many people are working from home. The only other thing that comes to mind, and this affects both field and office staff, is that we all still have to have meetings, right? So you can't get in a room with people in a remote work environment. So we've enabled about 800 additional WebEx accounts compared to what we had previously. Unfortunately, WebEx has been pretty stable. It all goes through our state IT department, and they've been super responsive with enabling those. Since it was an enterprise WebEx site, it's secure. We haven't had any issues other than just people struggling with using microphones on their computers versus the call-in feature or internet speeds at home, like we're all experiencing.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. Sounds like y'all have really kind of had to scramble just to get a lot of logistics really taken care of.
Yep.
John, John Taylor, I wanted to kind of throw one over to you real quick, and we have a related question from the gallery. Catherine talked a little bit about there's my dogs. Catherine talked a little bit about how the federal government's stance on this and everything, but that there are different local and state laws. I know that you had mentioned that I think West Virginia has a law about public bid openings. Could you talk a little bit about what y'all have done to accommodate that law and about sort of how you made that decision and how you moved forward with a public bid opening and from a remote location?
Sure, Joe. West Virginia's had a law that we must have a public bid opening and the bids to be read aloud. We have partnered with the West Virginia Contractors Association to use a software called ClickMeeting. This software allows West Virginia DOT to broadcast a live bid letting at said time of bid opening. So for an example, for a 10 a.m. letting, usually ours was at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. We usually begin at 9:45 and play music so contractors, suppliers, and vendors and stuff can realize that they are connected to us and everything's good to go. And then at 10 a.m., I just simply make an announcement that we're currently downloading and encrypting the bids. So then the panelists know. You go in and you launch the bids on the bid opener for BidX, and then you sit and wait. And the time frame for that depends on how many jobs you got in that letting time frame.
And so anybody who's logged into the meeting software can see the screen and see it opening, or what are they watching?
Well, we've thought about that, but we haven't showed them the screen. We got a little title sheet just saying, hey, we're downloading and encrypting the bids, which we'll read at approximately 10:30 a.m. So once that gets completed, then all we do today is just show the screen on BidX, the apparent bids, and I just start reading them aloud from there. But we have thought about showing them the actual decrypting of the bids, but we haven't went that far yet.
Okay. It's not very exciting, but
no, but it is transparent. I mean, you're trying to be transparent and post them as soon as possible. So.
Yeah, and we have a question from one of our attendees. Are there issues related to cybersecurity when you're doing your bid opening at home? And John, I'll ask you to answer that, but Devin, I think if you could jump in on that a little bit as well after he's answered that.
Well, I hope none of our internal IT folks from West Virginia are listening in today. But what we have discovered is doing it from home is faster than going through the service at work because of all the firewalls that they put up there. Now I know that the bids and everything are decrypted and highly secure, but going through an agency firewall sometimes may slow the bidding process, slow down the decrypting. But doing it from my home, it's a lot faster.
That's interesting.
Yeah, thanks. I can jump in there too. We haven't realized any security concerns with working remotely. You know, we had a lot of pretty robust security protocols in place with firewall rules and such before. So the only adjustment that we have made is that we have started to push multi-factor for VPN connections. Previously, that wasn't a standard practice, but due to all the national level guidance, that's something that we've taken a harder look at here recently.
Okay, great. Odette, did you have something to chime in on that? Were you going to say something?
Actually, yes. Kind of directed at John. So John, prior to your organization deciding to use ClickMeeting, how did you guys, make your way to that decision? Like, what drove you to that?
We wanted to give a login to the industry, the contracting industry, a set telephone number and a set ID that they could always log in at every time. That's why we chose ClickMeeting. We were granted that telephone number and that call in, that login ID to be consistent letting after letting. So if a contractor's out in the field somewhere, he knows to call 10 a.m. on Tuesday at this number and we'll be there having a letting.
Okay.
John, do you have stats on how many people actually attend those or log into those meetings? Do you?
Yes. We keep the stats, and usually I'd say about 150, 200 sometimes on a larger one. On a smaller one, we still get up in the 70s and 80s.
No kidding. Wow, that's impressive.
And Joe, just real quick, kind of going back to John. So John, based on the stats that you currently keep, how does the use of ClickMeeting and your current attendees compare to when you probably read the bids aloud from the DOT itself?
Oh, when we read the bids aloud, we didn't have enough room in the office to facilitate everybody. So we learned real quick we got to do something to get the people to quit showing up. So having these lettings online and getting them used to it got them to stay at home. And we keep track of visitors, and I'd say it's going on 3 years since the last time we've had a visitor to come. So we still maintain an offset room somewhere in case a visitor does show up. All we do is just somebody grabs a laptop and goes in there and sets them down in front of the laptop, explain to them that they can view this from home. And so, like I said, going on 3 years now, we haven't had a visitor.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to toss a question out to Grant and Blake. Y'all are both from Tennessee. Have y'all done a bid opening since, stay-at-home orders have been issued?
We have. We took a little different approach than West Virginia did as far as the public reading is concerned. We moved to Bid Express 15 years ago this month. So we've been bidding everything electronically for the last 15 years. And when we started that process in 2005, we were doing a similar process as far as inviting all the contractors in, reading bids publicly. We had to do it in a hotel because we didn't have anywhere in our office to house that many people. And because of that, we decided to sit down with our legal department as well as our FHWA representative at the time. And we reevaluated what a public reading was and rewrote our state statutes to allow us to use Bid Express's apparent bid publishing process. So our apparent bids are published automatically through Bid Express as they are downloaded. So then anybody on the web can look at Bid Express and see our apparent bids, and that status rewrote at that time. So we had a letting last month, and download speeds were actually pretty close to what they are in the office, maybe just a hair slower, but not anything noticeable. And we actually have another letting scheduled for 3 weeks from this Friday, and it'll proceed as scheduled.
Okay. Blake, anything to add to that, or? No? Okay. And Grant, and I guess I'll throw this out to anybody that's done a bid opening. Have you noticed any changes in the number of respondents you're getting, the number of people that seem to be expressing interest in bids? Is it just business as usual? Kendall, you open bids, don't you?
Yeah, really, we've only had about one bid opening since things were kind of getting more serious. We haven't really noticed anything, but as far as difference in number of bidders or who's bidding with us, but it's something that we'll continue to monitor for sure.
Okay. And have you altered your letting schedule at all? Do you foresee what you had planned going 3-4 months into the future? Do you
We
foresee
have
them?
not. We are continuing on with our letting schedule as planned, as far at this point anyway.
Okay. And I'll throw this one out to the DOT folks as well. It seems, driving around my town here, it's a pretty small town, so it's always pretty quiet. But traffic-wise, things seem quiet, and kind of seeing jokes around that this is when we should be getting our road construction done and everything. Do you see sort of the same project in road work, or the same progress in road work? Is it kind of continuing as usual, or are you seeing slowdowns and things like that, or are you trying to sort of keep that schedule up?
We're trying to push a little faster, actually. We took it as an opportunity, especially in our huge metropolitan areas. For example, we work in Nashville. Daytime traffic in Nashville is pretty much means construction is not even an option during the day. And because of the reduced levels of traffic, we've actually taken that opportunity to open up some of our timeframes a little bit and let contractors work in timeframes that we typically wouldn't. So because of that, we've actually accelerated some schedules.
That's great.
And Grant, quick question. So when you all were looking at revising your state statutes around the term public opening or public reading, how long did that take? Was that a quick process, or did it take months or a year?
I don't know exactly. I asked around a little bit to try to find out. Unfortunately, it was 15 years ago, and we don't have anybody that still works in our small department that was here at the time. But looking at the lettings online and when they stopped doing those public meetings, it must have been a relatively quick process. I would say a matter of about 3 lettings. So you're looking at maybe less than 6 months. They must have got it figured out because we stopped holding those public meetings pretty quickly after we made the transition to Bid Express.
Okay. I have a question, and I'm not very familiar with this, so we might have to answer it offline, but I'll go ahead and throw it out to the panel here. Someone says, have you ever experienced non-compete bids during a public opening? If so, how do you address this? I'm personally not familiar with a non-compete bid, but if anyone has an answer to that, we can go ahead and take it. Non-complete, I'm sorry, an incomplete bid. So if you had a bid that's come through where, it was flagged with something missing or something like that.
This is John from West Virginia. We read all of the bids as apparent bids, and the industry realizes that we got to go through a process to award it later. So whatever submitted on BidX, whatever gets downloaded, we always read them as apparent.
Okay, and if I know the way project bids works and everything, so say they're missing a price, it would flag their item as red. If they're missing an item in their bid, are you marking that non-responsive, or are you taking that back, reviewing it, and then handling that during award?
We'll handle that during award. Because we're doing these internet live shows, so we're just taking what we get, calling them apparent low bids, and then behind the scenes before award meeting, then we rule some of them irregular if they didn't complete everything.
Okay. Grant, were you going to chime in there?
Yeah, exactly what he said. The apparent word is very key there. That's the apparent bid results, and that's what the Express page shows, and that's the way we are sure of this.
Okay. Sorry. Catherine, can I just throw something over to you real quick? Because we have you and I'm interested in your e-construction experience. Outside of internet bidding, what are the sort of things that are coming up in e-construction that you're excited about? I mean, you know, we know that we're looking at different inspection tools and different things like that, and we feel like they're going to be helpful in sort of in any situation, but definitely in the situation we're in now. What are the things that you're looking at that you're particularly excited about?
So there's a couple. The first one is document management in general, going beyond just PDFs and email. So we're getting into more systems that do document routing, document tracking, and the digital signatures as part of those features of those commercial off-the-shelf solutions, and also within custom solutions within state DOTs. Seeing them used for bidding documents. So once you have an apparent low bid, using them as part of the award process with bonding companies and contractors. We're seeing them as part of RFIs, change orders, estimates, going back and forth, shop drawings, DBE paperwork, payroll, compliance stuff. We're seeing that workflow being transformed into a digital world, but not just email. We're talking about an actual system that receives them, tracks them, routes them, and there's some congruity and some information technology behind what they're doing. It's not just a dumping ground. Another one was mobile devices. So we do still have a lot of states where mobile devices are still not completely accessible to all inspection staff. So being able to get mobile devices and mobile apps, so things that work on apps, be it inspector daily reports, specifications, contract documents, plans, having as-built ability to notate as-builts or put in RFIs to plans. There's a couple softwares out there that do that as well. And the other one that we're seeing a real uptick in right now is e-ticketing. So we're seeing a huge increase the last 3 years. We've had about a dozen states take a really serious look at e-ticketing. And for 2020's construction season, we had about a half dozen more that were entering the e-ticketing market. And in the last 2 or 3 months, I think I've gotten about 100 phone calls.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really interested in e-ticketing as well, and have been kind of working with DOTs and AASHTO to get moving on that. So it's really interesting. I think we probably have time to for one more question. The panel here, you know, we had asked one of our local attendees if they could attend and talk a little bit about their experience with internet bidding. From y'all's perspective as DOTs, Blake, we haven't heard you talk, so I'm going to throw this out. You might not be able to answer, but we'll give it to somebody else. Is this a state thing, or do you think that locals, you know, could move on to this type of platform, and internet bidding could be helpful for them?
So I know Tennessee has a couple. There's only a few states that I'm aware of, or a few cities that I'm aware of, that are allowed to actually do electronic bidding in regards to like local programs for TDOT. We still require, I think Memphis and maybe Chattanooga are the only two that have permission. All the others, we still actually require paper bids to be mailed in for all of our local programs jobs. So I'm not sure whether or not our local programs office has considered that, but I can see where it would be beneficial, but I'm not sure if they considered it this time.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. I think we're getting about close to being out of time, and I think I've asked my questions. Just there are a couple questions left on the panel questions here that I think are more sort of specific to Infotech, and we'll answer those offline. Before we continue, just from the panelists, does anyone have, you know, anything additional you'd like to add, or any other comments?
I would say from a national perspective, we do have local agencies doing electronic bidding. As Tennessee alluded to, it is state specific and often local agency specific. Some of our state DOTs are allowing their local agencies to utilize their state software. So if a state DOT has something, they are allowing the locals to piggyback on that existing program or system. We also have several states who have chosen their own internet bidding solution or construction management solution, and they are going on their own. We've had some webinars that we've done with some of those as well, where they've highlighted what they're doing as well. So there is a lot of locals out there. Not that we don't have any tribes, but there are quite a few local agencies out there that are doing it. I could probably come up with a list of probably 24.
Yeah, I know personally I've worked with a good handful of locals, and we're working with Ohio right now. Odette is trying to get all of their local projects going through internet bidding so they can get that data into their civil rights software and things like that a little easier.
The key is the partnership between the state DOT and the local agencies.
Excellent. That's a great point. Okay. If nobody has anything else, then I think we will wrap up. And I'd greatly appreciate all of your joining us and taking your time here and in participating in the planning sessions. We'll put some contact information up on the screen if anyone has additional questions. You should in the email have the names and everything for everyone who was on as a panelist, and I think that most of their information is probably publicly available through the DOT, through their DOTs, and you can feel free to reach out to them. Otherwise, our contact information is here. Please, any questions you have, we'll keep an eye out for your emails and questions. And again, thank you very much, all of our panelists for taking the time here, and Odette for attending as well.
All right, no problem.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.